Every musician dreams of being discovered. For Tommy Rodriguez, it happened in the most impossible way imaginable. Prince heard his guitar over 72,000 screaming fans, stopped his own concert, and invited an unknown teenager to jam with him on the biggest stage in the world. What happened next wasn't just a performance. It was the birth of a legend witnessed by a stadium full of people who still can't believe what they saw. The August night was electric. London had been waiting months for Prince to bring the Love-Sexy tour to Wembley Stadium, and the anticipation had built to a fever pitch. 72,000 people packed the legendary venue, a sea of purple, screaming voices, and raised hands stretching from the stage to the farthest corners of the stadium. The production was massive, a stage shaped like a living room, complete with a functioning basketball hoop, a brass bed, and enough lights to illuminate a small city. Prince stood at the center of it all, wearing his signature, high-collared jacket, moving with the supernatural grace that made him the most electrifying performer of his generation. The band was locked in tight. The horns punched, the drums thundered, and Prince's guitar screamed notes that seemed to bend reality itself. This was the Love-Sexy tour, at its peak, theatrical, spiritual, and absolutely untouchable. But in section 547, row 42, seat 18, about as far from the stage as you could get while still being inside, Wembley and one 8-year-old kid named Tommy Rodriguez was about to change everything. Tommy Rodriguez wasn't supposed to be at Wembley that night. He was a street musician from East London, the son of Spanish immigrants who worked double shifts at a local factory. His guitar, a battered acoustic he'd bought for £30 at a pawn shop, was his most prized possession. He played on street corners, outside tube stations, anywhere people might drop a coin or two into his open case. He'd taught himself to play by, listening to records, rewinding cassettes until the tape wore thin, mimicking every note until his fingers bled. Prince was his god. Tommy had discovered Purple Rain when he was 14, and it had rewired his brain completely. He'd spent 4 years studying Prince's guitar work, the way he bent notes, the way he mixed funk and rock, and something that didn't have a name. Tommy could play almost every Prince song by ear, though he'd never dreamed of playing them anywhere but empty streets. The ticket to Wembley had cost him 2 weeks of earnings. Nosebleed seats, obstructed view. But he didn't care. He just needed to be in the same building as Prince, to breathe the same air, to hear that guitar live. Just once. He'd brought his own guitar because he had a gig after the show, a late-night spot outside a pub in Soho, where drunk tourists sometimes tipped well. The instrument sat in its case under his seat, forgotten as soon as Prince took the stage. For the first hour, Tommy was in heaven. He sang along to every song, his voice lost in the roar of 72,000 others. He air-guitared through the solos, his fingers moving on invisible strings. He cried during Purple Rain and screamed during Kiss. Then Prince started playing Let's Go Crazy, and something inside Tommy snapped, without thinking, without planning, without any awareness of what he was doing. Tommy reached under his seat and pulled out his guitar. His fingers found the strings, and he began to play along. It was impossible that anyone would hear him. An acoustic guitar against 72,000 screaming fans, and a stadium sound system that could shake buildings? Impossible. But somehow, against all odds, someone did hear, and that someone was Prince. Prince was deep into the guitar solo of Let's Go Crazy when he heard it. A harmony, a perfect, impossible harmony coming from somewhere in the darkness beyond the stage lights. At first, he thought he was imagining it. The sound was faint, barely audible over the wall of noise from the crowd. But Prince's ears were legendary. He could hear a single out-of-tune string in a 20-piece orchestra, a slightly off-tempo snare hit in a complex rhythm. This was real. Someone was playing along with him, and they were good. Not just good, extraordinary. The mystery guitarist wasn't just copying Prince's licks, they were responding to them, creating a musical conversation that weaved in and out of the solo like they'd been playing together for years. Every time Prince went high, the other guitar went low. Every time Prince paused, the mystery player filled the space with something beautiful. Prince kept playing, but his eyes were scanning the crowd, searching for the source of this impossible sound. The stage lights made it difficult to see beyond the first few rows, but the sound seemed to be coming from somewhere far away, very far away. He looked to his left, where Wendy Melvoin was watching him with a curious expression. She'd heard it too. Her eyes were wide, scanning the crowd just like his. Prince made a decision. What Prince did next had never been done before in the history of the Lovesexy tour. He stopped playing mid-solo, held up his hand to silence the band, and spoke directly to 72,000 confused fans. "Hold up," Prince said into his microphone. "Hold up, hold up, hold up." The band stumbled to a stop, one instrument at a time. The crowd's roar faded to a confused murmur. 72,000 people suddenly went quiet, sensing that something unusual was happening. "I heard something," Prince said, his voice carrying clearly through the stadium's massive PA system. "Someone out there is playing guitar. Someone good. And I want to know who it is." The crowd buzzed. With confusion, people looked at each other, shrugging, whispering. Who would bring a guitar to a Prince concert? Tommy Rodriguez, in section 547, felt his blood turn to ice. "I know you're out there," Prince continued, his eyes sweeping across the darkened stadium. "I heard you. You were playing harmony to my solo. Beautiful harmony." He paused. "Do it again. Play something so I can find you." Silence. 72,000 people holding their breath. Tommy's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his guitar. This couldn't be happening. This was a dream. A hallucination. Prince couldn't have heard him from all the way up here. It was impossible. But then the guy next to him, a burly man in a leather jacket, nudged him with his elbow. "Mate, he's talking about you. I saw you playing." Tommy shook his head. "No way. There's no way he play something." Frets. The instrument he'd bought with money saved from playing on street corners. It felt impossibly small in this moment, in this stadium, with Prince waiting somewhere far below. His fingers found the strings almost without his permission. He played a riff, a simple melodic phrase he'd written himself, something that wasn't Prince, wasn't anyone, just Tommy. The notes rang out, thin and fragile against the vastness of Wembley Stadium, but Prince's head snapped up immediately. He pointed not at the section, but seemingly directly at Tommy, as if he could see through the darkness and the distance. "There!" Prince shouted. "Section! What is that, 5-something? Way up top. You with the acoustic. I hear you, brother. I hear you." The spotlight operators swung their beams toward the upper sections, searching. It took them almost 30 seconds to find Tommy, a skinny teenager in a worn denim jacket, holding a battered acoustic guitar, looking like he might pass out from shock. When the light hit him, 72,000 people turned to look. The roar that followed was unlike anything Tommy had ever experienced. "What's your name?" Prince called out. Tommy couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. The man next to him grabbed his arm. "Tell him your name." Tommy," he managed to croak. "Tommy Rodriguez." Prince grinned, that famous, mischievous grin that had graced 1,000 magazine covers. "Tommy Rodriguez, you play pretty good for someone sitting in the cheap seats." The crowd laughed. "How'd you like to come down here and show me what you really got? Imagine being 18 years old. Imagine being so poor you can only afford the worst seats in the house. Imagine the greatest guitarist of your generation stopping his concert and calling your name. What would you do?" The next few minutes were a blur for Tommy. Security guards appeared, guiding him down endless flights of stairs, through corridors, past equipment cases and crew members who stared at him like he was an alien. His guitar banged against his hip with every step. His heart was beating so hard he could hear it over the distant rumble of the crowd. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to kids from East London who played for coins on street corners. But it was happening. When Tommy finally emerged from the tunnel at the side of the stage, he stopped dead. The view from up close was overwhelming: the lights, the massive video screens, the wall of 72,000 faces stretching into infinity. And there, center stage, watching him with an expression of genuine curiosity, was Prince Rogers Nelson, the Purple One, the greatest guitarist Tommy had ever heard. "Come on, don't be shy," Prince said into his microphone. "Tommy Rodriguez, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him some encouragement. The crowd erupted. Chants of, "Tommy! Tommy!" echoed through Wembley, people stomping their feet until the whole stadium shook. Tommy walked toward center stage on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. When he reached Prince, he didn't know what to do. Bow? Shake hands? Fall to his knees and worship? Prince solved the problem by reaching out and taking Tommy's acoustic guitar from his hands. "This what you been playing?" He examined the instrument with the critical eye of a master. £30 at a pawn shop, am I right? Tommy nodded, unable to speak. Prince strummed a chord. The sound was thin, buzzy, clearly an instrument at the end of its life. But Prince smiled anyway. "You know what, Tommy? It's not about the instrument. It's about the hands." He handed the guitar back and pointed to a roadie at the side of the stage. "Bring me the cloud." What happened next made Wendy and Lisa, watching from the side stage, look at each other in disbelief. Prince was giving Tommy something he rarely let anyone touch: his legendary cloud guitar, the purple cymbal-shaped instrument that had become iconic. The roadie jogged over, carrying the cloud guitar like it was made of glass. The instrument gleamed under the stage lights. Pure, white body, gold hardware, curves like a work of art. It was worth more than Tommy's family made in a year. Prince took it and held it out to Tommy. "You wanted to jam with me? Let's jam. But let's do it right." Tommy's hands were shaking as he took the guitar. It was heavier than he expected, perfectly balanced, the neck smooth as silk under his fingers. I don't know if I can." "You already did," Prince interrupted. From 500 feet away, through 72,000 screaming fans, with a 30-pound pawn shop guitar. "I think you can handle this." He turned to his band. "Boys, give us a groove. Something funky. Key of E." The band launched into a driving funk rhythm. Bass thumping, drums snapping, keyboards laying down a carpet of groove. Prince grabbed a bass guitar from a stand and slung it over his shoulder. "Your move, Tommy Rodriguez. Show Wembley what you got." For a moment, Tommy just stood there, frozen. The cloud guitar hung from his shoulders like an impossible weight. This was Prince's guitar, Prince's stage, Prince's 72,000 fans. He closed his eyes, blocked out the lights, blocked out the crowd. He thought about the street corners in East London, the empty nights playing for pigeons and stars, his father working double shifts, his mother who always said his gift would take him places. And then he played. The first note rang out across Wembley like a bell. Clear, pure, perfect. Tommy's fingers found a melody he'd written on a rainy Tuesday, simple but beautiful, a phrase that climbed and fell like a bird in flight. The crowd went silent. Prince's eyes widened with surprise, then joy. This kid wasn't just good, he was phenomenal. "Yeah," Prince said softly. "That's it." He began playing bass underneath Tommy's melody, not competing, but supporting. The band adapted instantly, drums softening, keyboards adding subtle textures. Tommy opened his eyes. The music had taken over. His fingers danced across the cloud's fretboard, creating phrases that seemed to come from somewhere outside himself. For 10 minutes, Prince and Tommy jammed together on the Wembley Stadium stage. It was a conversation, two musicians speaking a language that transcended words, age, and fame. Prince would play a phrase. Tommy would respond. Tommy would venture into unexplored territory. Prince would follow, then lead, then follow again. Side stage. Wendy Melvoin leaned over to Lisa Coleman. "He never does this," she whispered. "Prince never lets anyone touch the cloud. Never lets anyone lead." Lisa nodded. "This kid is special." The jam built to a crescendo. Tommy was playing things he'd never played before, techniques he'd only dreamed about, phrases that channeled every hour of practice, every cold night on street corners. When the final chord rang out, a massive, shimmering wall of sound, the silence lasted 3 seconds. Then the stadium exploded. 72,000 people leaped to their feet, screaming and crying. Tommy stood there, the cloud guitar still in his hands, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't believe this was real. Prince walked over to Tommy and put his arm around the teenager's shoulders. He raised the microphone to his lips. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been playing guitar for almost 30 years. I've jammed with the best in the world. But tonight, this kid from the cheap seats just taught me something." He turned to Tommy. "You know what you taught me?" Tommy shook his head, unable to speak. "You taught me that talent doesn't care about money, doesn't care about connections, doesn't care about where you sit or how much your guitar costs. Talent just is." He looked out at the crowd. Tommy Rodriguez was sitting in the last row with a 30-pound guitar, and he played so good I could hear him over all of you beautiful, loud people. The crowd laughed and cheered. "That tells me something about fate," Prince continued. "That tells me something about purpose. Tommy wasn't supposed to be heard tonight, but he was. Because some things are meant to happen." He turned back to Tommy and did something that made the entire stadium gasp. He took the cloud guitar, his legendary, iconic, irreplaceable cloud guitar, and held it out to Tommy. "This is yours now." Tommy's mouth fell open. I can't. That's your, I have others," Prince said with a smile. "But you? You only got one shot at this moment. Take the guitar. Take it and remember what happened here tonight. And promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll never stop playing. Promise me you'll take this gift and use it to become who you're supposed to be. Promise me that someday, when you're famous, you'll find some kid in the cheap seats and give them the same chance I'm giving you." Tommy's hands were trembling as he accepted the guitar. It felt different now, not borrowed, but his. A gift, a responsibility, a beginning. "I promise," he whispered. Prince hugged him. Right there, on stage, in front of 72,000 people. A genuine embrace between two musicians who had shared something that couldn't be explained. When Prince finally released Tommy, he raised the teenager's hand like a boxing referee declaring a winner. "Tommy Rodriguez, everybody. Remember that name. You're gonna hear it again." The ovation lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Tommy stood there, clutching the cloud guitar, crying openly, overwhelmed by the impossibility of what had just happened to him. Finally, a security guard gently guided him off stage. But before Tommy disappeared into the wings, Prince called out one more time. "Hey, Tommy!" Tommy turned. "I'm serious about that promise. Don't let me down." "I won't," Tommy said. "I swear." Prince could have ignored the sound from the cheap seats. He could have assumed it was feedback, or his imagination, or just noise. Instead, he stopped his own concert to find a teenager with a 30-pound guitar and gave him the chance of a lifetime, who needs to believe that talent always finds a way. The rest of the Lovesexy tour continued as planned, but everyone who was at Wembley that night carried the memory of what they'd witnessed. Bootleg recordings of the jam session became some of the most sought-after unofficial recordings in music history. But the real story was what happened to Tommy Rodriguez. Within a month, Tommy had signed with a management company. Within 6 months, he was a session guitarist. Within a year, he was touring with major acts. But he never forgot his promise. 10 years later, Tommy was headlining his own concert at the Royal Albert Hall. Before his encore, he stopped the show, told the story of Prince, then invited a 6-year-old violinist from the audience to join him on stage. He said the same words Prince had said to him. "Show me what you got." That girl's name was Elena Vasquez. She's now one of the most celebrated violinists in the world. And she tells the same story about Dıscovery, about passing the gift forward. Prince died in 2016, but his legacy lived on in the chain of discovery he started at Wembley Artists. Finding artists, talent lifting talent. Tommy Rodriguez still has the cloud guitar. It hangs on his studio wall, next to a framed photo from that night, a skinny 8-year-old holding Prince's guitar, 72,000 people on their feet. Under the photo is a small plaque. Talent doesn't care about money, doesn't care about connections. Talent just is. Prince, Wembley, 1988. When people ask Tommy about that night, he says Prince could have kept playing his solo. Instead, he stopped. He listened. He gave a street kid a chance that changed everything. He pauses, looking at the cloud guitar. That's what real greatness looks like. Not what you keep, what you give away. Every year, Tommy hosts the Cheap Seats Showcase in East London. Free entry for young musicians to play for scouts and producers. Because some people are meant to be discovered, even from the last row, even with a 30-pound guitar. Prince knew that, and now, so does everyone who hears this story.